Deep in the birch forest, in a small clearing, lived the evil, the terrible Baba Yaga. No one knows how long she had lived there. It seemed like it had been forever. Baba Yaga was very tall and very thin, almost like a skeleton. And she was always hungry. And her favorite dish was humans. And her hut was a testament to this fact, for it was made of all the human bones of all the people that she had ever consumed. Needless to say, Baba Yaga lived alone. Sometimes an occasional visitor, a hapless hiker, a wandering minstrel would pass by, never to be seen from again, except in the case of a young woman whose story bears telling, and this is how it goes. Once upon a time, on the edge of Baba Yaga's forest, there was a huge castle where a stepmother and her stepdaughters and Vasilisa and her father lived. When Vasilisa was very young, her mother had died, and her father decided that he was going to remarry so that his daughter would have the benefit of a loving, caring mother. So he didn't remarry so much for himself, but for his daughter, and this backfired. Time passed, and the father died. But before he died, he bequeathed his entire kingdom to the stepmother under one condition, that she would take very good care of Vasilisa. But when the father was gone, she showed her true colors and treated Vasilisa horribly, banishing her to the coldest and darkest part of the castle. And her stepdaughters modeled their mother and teased and taunted Vasilisa.
Braid my hair, Vasilisa. Make me a chocolate cake. Wash the floor, there's a piece of dust there. Come on, do it, you're so ugly. We hate you.
Now, if mercy would have been had, she would have begged for mercy. And if she could have run away, she would have run away, but there was nowhere to run to. But Vasilisa, the funny thing was that the more they teased and taunted her, the more kind and compassionate and good she became, and beautiful. She also had a very special secret, a doll. Before her mother had passed, she had made this doll and poured all of her love into it. And she gave it to Vasilisa and said, "Now, Vasi, if you're ever lonely and upset, talk to this doll. She will help you." And by some miracle, the doll did. For you see, this doll was alive. It was just an ordinary doll, and the stepsisters would have thrown it in the trash. But every night when Vasilisa came home to her shabby, dark quarters, she talked to the doll and poured all her hopes and dreams out. And the doll's eyes would light up and glow, and she would encourage her. So Vasilisa always had hope for her future, and she never felt alone. Time passed, and the stepdaughters grew, and Vasilisa grew. And the stepdaughters became homelier and plainer and meaner, and Vasilisa grew in beauty and goodness. And the stepmother saw this, and she knew that with Vasilisa around, no one would ever marry her daughters. So she plotted a very sinister plan to get rid of Vasilisa. For you see, this stepmother was a witch. So she called all the girls together and told them that they must tend to their lace making and their mending. So they gathered around a table with one small candle, and Vasilisa's stepmother sat in the darkness, and all you could hear was her chair rocking back and forth and back and forth. And she stared at Vasilisa like a cat in the night. Around about midnight, the candle blew out, and all the girls rushed to light more candles, but they all blew out. For you see, this was the spell the stepmother, who was a witch, cast on the castle, that it would be dark just for this one moment, so she could carry out her sinister plan. "Vasilisa, make yourself useful. Don't just sit there. Go out to the hut of Baba Yaga and tell her to lend us a light. Go on now, girl, get on with you. So Vasilisa obeyed, and she went to her room, and the doll saw her.
Hey, Vasilisa, you look very troubled. What is the problem?
My stepmother has ordered me to Baba Yaga's hut to fetch a light, and I know I shall never return.
Oh, shush, 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 said the doll. Everything will be all right. Do exactly what your stepmother says to do, and take me with you.
So Vasilisa grabbed the doll and put her in her pocket and ran out into the night. Oh, it was dark. It was well past midnight, and she didn't dare look into the woods because the shadows were shifting and furtive eyes were staring at her. She followed a small footpath through the woods that was lit by the light of the moon. She walked all night, and suddenly a pale rider appeared with white armor and a white face, and he galloped past her. And a tiny sliver of dawn followed, and Vasilisa felt a chill. And then a red rider appeared on a chestnut horse in scarlet armor with a scarlet face, and he galloped past, and the sun rose, and it was a new day, and all the birds began to sing. So Vasilisa took the doll, and they talked and they sang, and they walked briskly through the woods until they came to a small clearing where they saw a fearsome sight. It was the hut of Baba Yaga, balancing on human bones, surrounded by a fence with fence posts with human skulls on each post. And then a dark rider appeared, riding a black stallion in black armor with a black face, and the moon rose, and the skulls lit up. Vasilisa looked around. She heard some crackling in the background, and she hid behind a tree, clutching the doll close to her. Suddenly, Baba Yaga flew in on a mortar, carrying a pestle and a broom.
Ah, you might as well come out, dear. I could smell you a mile away, I could. Oh, you smell tender and sweet, you do. And Baba Yaga smiled, revealing rows of sharpened teeth.
Vasilisa took a deep breath. She knew she must be very brave. She clutched the doll close to her heart, and she came out into the clearing. She bowed to Baba Yaga and cast her eyes downward. Baba Yaga, my stepmother has sent me here. My name is Vasilisa. She has sent me here to ask if you might lend us a light.
Oh, did she now? Well, I'm more than familiar with your stepmother, dear. You could have asked for better relations. You could have. And I know those stepdaughters, too. I'm happy to lend you a light, I am. But you must come and work for me and live with me first. All right? And if you accomplish all the tasks I give you, why, then I might not eat you. Come along.
Baba Yaga walked towards the gate that was latched with a human hand with a large human mouth, and she said,
Open up!
And she flew into the hut. And Baba Yaga sat in front of her fireplace, and she rocked back and forth.
Oh, I'm hungry, I am. I'm about ravenous. There's food in the oven.
But Vasilisa did not need to be told twice. She ran to the oven, she opened it, and there was a 12-foot sturgeon inside, stuffed with wild rice and mushrooms. So she baked that. And then on top of the stove, there was a gallon of borscht, a cold beet soup. And then there were dozens and dozens of pierogies, which are meat-filled turnovers. So she presented this feast to Baba Yaga, who gobbled up every morsel and didn't look up until she had finished.
Now, your task for tomorrow is this. You must go out and you must separate all the wheat from the chaff. I've no idea what that means, but you better do it. Then you've got to come in here and you've got to clean the whole place. You've got to clean the outside. You've got to do the mending. You've got to do the linen. What else? And that's what you've got to do. And prepare a delicious meal for me. And if you don't, then I get to eat you.
And Baba Yaga fell fast asleep. Vasilisa retreated to the darkest corner of the hut, and she took the doll out. She said, I don't know what I want to do. The doll said, hey, shh, shh, shh. Everything will be all right. Do not think about this now. You must go
the morning, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
Well, Vasilisa could not go to sleep. She stared out the window all night long until the pale rider came, and the dawn rose, and the red rider came, and the sun rose. And it was a dawn of a new day. And just then Baba Yaga woke up. Mortar, pestle, broom, chop chop, let's go. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya. And Baba Yaga flew off into the day. The second Baba Yaga was gone, the doll rushed out and started completing all of the tasks. Vasilisa was shocked. She had no idea the doll was going to help her. So all she had to do was go about the cooking, and she loved to cook. And she prepared a delicious feast of kulbiak, which is a bread stuffed with onions and salmon and potatoes and cream cheese-filled pastries, and a meal fit for a czar. And she laid it out on the table just as the black stallion galloped by and the moon rose, and Baba Yaga came back to the hut, flying in excited because she knew she was going to eat Vasilisa. Ha!
Oh, you did everything.
And despite herself, Baba Yaga was pleased. She sat down and she consumed the entire meal and didn't stop until she'd eaten every morsel.
Well, apparently I didn't make it hard enough for you. So this round, tomorrow, you gotta go out, and I lost a needle in a haystack. I got about 5,000 haystacks out there. I want you to find the needle. I do. And I also got a large barrel filled with poppy seeds. I want you to take out every piece of dust in that barrel. Then I'd like you to wash all the windows in the hut and prepare a delicious meal for me upon my return.
Vasilisa rushed to the darkest corner. She took the doll out. Shh. Go to sleep, go to sleep. So this time, Vasilisa did fall asleep. And she woke up just when the pale rider in the white armor and the white face galloped by. And the red rider came with his scarlet face and red armor, and the sun rose and the birds sang on a new day. And Baba Yaga woke up and flew out into the day. Well, the doll rushed out and started doing all the tasks, and she found that needle in the haystack. And Vasilisa was ecstatic, so she set out to cook, and cook she did. So Vasilisa prepared a beautiful feast fit for 20 Russian czars, just as the black stallion arrived and the moon rose and Baba Yaga returned home.
Oh, you did it.
Huh. Vasilisa said, Baba Yaga, please sit down and eat your meal before it gets cold. And Baba Yaga did, and she didn't look up until she had finished every last morsel. All right, we all can see you're an excellent cook, but you lack in social graces, so I'd like to have a conversation, I would. But you better watch out what you say. You may ask me one question, and you better be careful about the way you ask it. Vasilisa knew she had to be very brave. She clutched the doll close to her heart, and she said, Who are the 3 men that ride through your forest, Baba Yaga?
Oh, that's an excellent question, it is. You know why? Because you didn't ask me anything about what's inside my hut. I cherish my privacy, I do, and I wouldn't have taken kindly to you asking me about anything in my private life. No, I wouldn't have. All those men work for me. One is the dawn, one is the day, and one is the night. Now I have a question for you. How did you complete all those tasks? Eh? And Vasilisa smiled, and she knew Baba Yaga would not like this answer. By my mother's love, said Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga hated anything to do with love. I think it's about time for you to go. All right? Yeah. I'll get you your light.
So Baba Yaga ran out and she grabbed one of the fence posts that held a skull that had light through its eyes, and she handed it to Vasilisa.
Now, you take this light and you present it to your stepmother, girl, all right?
Vasilisa said,
Thank you, Baba Yaga. All right, get on with you, get on with you. I think I'm going to miss you. Wish I could have been able to eat her. Oh, she would have been delicious, she would have.
So Vasilisa ran out into the woods with the torch. It lit the way. It was completely dark. It was well after midnight. And she clutched the doll close to her heart, and she ran all through the night until the pale rider came, and the tiny sliver of dawn followed, and the red rider came, and the sun rose on a new day. And they sang and they laughed and they ran and they all through the day until they made it to the edge of the forest, and the black rider came and the moon rose. And she saw the castle in the distance, and it was all in darkness, which she thought was a little strange, because you see, the spell that the witch had cast had backfired, and the castle had been in darkness for days. So Vasilisa approached the castle around about midnight. She thought, well, everyone must be asleep, so I'll just leave the torch here.
No you don't, said the torch. It suddenly came to life. Bring me in there, do exactly what Baba Yaga said to do, or you'll pay, believe me. You don't want to upset Baba Yaga.
So Vasilisa took the torch and she opened the door, and she was shocked to see her stepmother and her stepsisters sitting in the darkness. And the stepsisters rushed the light, and the skull's head turned and it lit right into the stepmother, and she immediately burst into flames and was a pile of cinders. And then it set and turned on the stepdaughters and bore into them, and they were engulfed in flames, and 2 piles of cinders sat there. Vasilisa could no longer live in the castle, and she ran, and she ran, and she ran, until she came to the edge of the forest, and there was a beautiful little cottage there, with a garden around it and a thatched roof. And she went up to the front door, and she knocked, and an elderly woman answered and said, "May I help you, dear?" And Vasilisa came in, and she told her whole story. And this is when Vasilisa's life took a turn for the better. For the elderly woman had always wanted a daughter, so she took Vasilisa in, and they grew to be very, very close. And Vasilisa discovered wonderful things about herself, for she hated to sit idle, and she was very good with her hands, and she had a special gift of making spun gold fabric. And she presented a bolt to the elderly woman. She said, "Thank you so much for caring for me." And the elderly woman said, "May I take it into the village and try to sell it?" "Oh, of course, do with it what you like." So she took the bolt into the village, and that day a king's courier happened to be traveling through the village, and he paid a handsome sum for that bolt, and he took it to the king, and the king said, "Oh, I must meet whoever made this fabric." And the courier said, "It's nobody, it was just some old woman in the village." And the king said, "Bring her to me." So the courier sought out the elderly woman, and he found her, and she said, "Oh, I didn't make that. Vasilisa made that." So Vasilisa was taken before the king, and the king immediately fell greatly, deeply in love with her, because she was so beautiful and good. Well, Vasilisa was a little cautious, and she spent time getting to know the king, and they had tea, and they took walks, and really got to know one another. And after the king had proposed 10 times, she finally said yes. And she moved into the castle. And many a night she would sit with the doll and reminisce about her times in the forest. And they would wonder, "I wonder what Baba Yaga is doing tonight." And that's the story of Baba Yaga and Vasilisa the Brave.